But yeah, long story short, your dick on the window fucking fucked me.
Ma'am, could you please flip a full-size Snickers into my mouth?
I've reached my final form. Fuck it.
From an outside perspective, there's a 15-foot-tall, angry, horny child with a big boner with his arm stuck in the dirt. And if you were to drive by, you would just see him with a squirt gun squirting at his arm in the dirt. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show.
It's the Dapper Dads podcast, episode 1.
Brought to you by Drama
and Fast Fingers Slam.
We thought it would be better to say each other's names, so don't get it twisted.
So you never know who it actually is.
You never know who we actually are. This is pirate radio all over again.
Feels so awkward at first.
I mean, because it's that first time you get on the mic, you never know what you're going to say to another person, you know? It's like we can prepare all we want, but at the end of the day, it's like, oh, shit, people are going to be listening to me.
And the fact that we're both naked and dripping wet is also interesting.
I mean, we wasted enough time setting up the equipment. It's like we're on a time crunch here. We both have lives and jobs.
And we both have boners.
And we don't always have
right
time
now
to dry off and put clothes back on. So I think if people are going to focus on what we're wearing and the state of moistness that we're at while we're doing the show, they're not really going to appreciate it for what it is.
Exactly. And they can't even see it, so I guess really we should thoroughly describe it for the next 45 minutes to an hour.
I mean, really, I think if people...
So how it started was...
I think if enough people were to get into the show...
They've already tuned out. They're already like, wow, this was exactly what I assumed it would be, and I'm fucking done.
This is exactly what I figured a podcast from these people would
These
be.
pieces of shit.
These awful human beings. On the topic of...
awful human beings.
Of awful human beings.
And you just point at me for 45 minutes.
Like just stone cold sounds, just shame. Shame for 45 minutes.
And then I start crying, and that's episode 2. So if you guys want to hold on to that, we will get into me crying.
If you really want to see what happens at the end of episode 2, you will also have to sit through about 50 more minutes of crying.
Yeah, it'll sound like that. But anyway, on the topic of awful human beings.
Just for everybody listening, we should let them know why we're doing this, why we got together here, how we met. We met by a twist of fate. We started working at a large retail chain.
Yeah, we don't want to use any names, but let's just say it rhymes with ball cart.
Let's just say I don't need somebody's massive team of lawyers coming after me because I have absolutely nothing to give to any stores that may even resemble something close to the words Fallout.
All I'm going to say is I have a gun and they're not going to take me alive.
See,
I work too much for this.
This is where the CIA starts listening to the show.
I want it as soon as possible.
The federales are going to come storm Matt's house.
I want them to be like, episode 1? These fucking guys went right into it.
We'll definitely be low-key pirate radio heroes then because we'll be taken down even before our first episode is finished.
Exactly, which is all I really wanted.
I specifically remember the day you started because you started with another gentleman.
I specifically remember as well, yes.
You started with another gentleman, and my first thoughts were the other gentleman was going to do a better job than you because I thought this guy looks like a complete dipshit.
Yeah.
Because you were
Piece of shit.
You're just standing there like playing with your finger tattoo, and I was like, this guy just looks like something that possibly, but not 100% sure, crawled out of the basement at the Roo and was born from all the fluids from that basement leaking down into the basement.
And by playing with finger tattoo, you mean my penis? Because that's how I remember it.
It's definitely smaller.
It could be wrong.
It's definitely smaller than your fingers, but
true. Then yeah, my fingers.
One could see it being confused.
Smaller than all my fingers, but it does branch off into 10 like a hand. Like one hand that has 10 fingers.
Literally, I feel bad for any woman you've actually ever slept with because they have to be just completely mortified afterwards.
I'll tell you when I finally do. Listen, I'm not saying that I've gotten bad compliments on how I perform in bed, but they've only come from all of the women I've had sex with.
100% of the time.
All of them. But that's the only people who have something to say. So, I mean, there's a huge
demographic out here that you're not reaching yet. And that's people who haven't seen your...
trying to reach them with my 10-fingered dick. Now everyone has definitely tuned out.
Yeah, at this point in the show, I think
this is just
nobody
therapeutic
really cares
at this point.
So what was your thought when you first met me for the first time? Because I just remember very vividly what I thought.
You were very jaunty, way too happy to be working where we were working.
Yeah. You
were like, the first thing that I specifically remember was you kept like showing us the ropes, the very extensive ropes of retail. And you were like, did you get that? Did you get that? And I was like, yeah. And then you were like, I don't like when people don't ask questions. That means they're not paying attention or something along those lines.
I still tell people this at work today.
All right.
What I tell people now is I would rather have someone ask me the same question 100 times than people not ask me questions at all, because then at least I know that person who's asking over and over again is trying to do it the right way.
True. And I was not trying to do it the right way.
I don't think you've ever done anything the right way your entire life for what it's worth.
I had to get that job, and I was like, all right, I'll give it a fucked up month of just like, I'm going in, and they're going to remember me, but I'm not going to work there.
How long did you end up being there for?
A year and a half.
I was there for probably about... No, I was
18 years.
I was there for about 4 years because
really
before you had shown up, I was a cashier for about a year and a half.
Okay.
And then one day on my way back to break, our manager, who we have very many fond memories of, we would like to say lots of good stories, but many fond memories. Saw me sell a pair of headphones on my way back to break, and he decided
out of the trunk of your car that you had taken from the store.
I mean, I don't want to go around throwing accusations or anything, but I mean, a man's got to make his money somehow. Like, okay, is it wrong to steal a loaf of bread for your starving family?
I don't know. Isn't this a song? What if God was one of us?
No, you're thinking the wrong thing. What I'm thinking is, is it wrong? I don't believe it's wrong to steal I personally don't believe it's wrong to steal bread for your starving family. But what if your family doesn't like bread? What if they like hundreds of cartons of cigarettes that you could take and push for a higher price? Then you take that cigarette money and you buy your family something they actually want to eat that isn't bread.
Like more cigarettes. That's how I grew up. I didn't have it all nice silver spoon. I just had silver cigarettes in my mouth.
One time we went on break together, and I'm almost positive I saw you eat 4 lit cigarettes.
Well, that's how I start before I start smoking an actual cigarette.
It's incredible. When you say you go through a pack a day, you're smoking the pack a day, but you're also eating the filter at the same time.
The best thing, side note about this, is today my phone reminded me that 2 years ago, I tweeted that I stopped smoking cigarettes every day because it got so boring and monotonous. That's how, like, fucking ridiculous my life is, that I was like, I'm going to stop smoking, like, Monday through Friday. Well, not fucking Friday. Monday through Thursday and Sundays. But, yeah, it was like, it's just boring. I don't like the repetitiveness of doing it in my car and it's cold out, so I'll just smoke on the weekends. And I've been doing that. So if we want to throw an applause in here, I've been fucking great, and I'm smoking a cigarette right now. Everything's out the window.
It's the weekend, though. It's technically Friday where we're at.
It is.
For what it's worth, I celebrated a year of being sober yesterday. Quietly.
Oh, I thought you said you're being sober, and I was like, what has that been, a week?
A year.
Not quite.
A year of me being sober.
Yeah, and we'll get into that because
absolutely.
I'm the one that had to cause your sobriety.
We'll definitely get into this later. Stay tuned for this later. If you've made it this far into the podcast, then we have some juicy stories coming up for you.
But yeah, back to our wonderful work experience. I started, and it was terrible.
As it always is.
And you were nice. Everyone else was weird. You're weird, but you're
nice.
I'm
that nice kind of weird where it's like, yeah, he's a fucking weird guy, but he's so nice about it that you can't, like, hate him for it. That's what I piggybacked off my entire life is
exactly.
That I know that I'm a strange guy, but if I'm polite enough about it, people are like, well, he means nice.
Yeah, and you're also a giant man.
A gigantic
It's a lot to take in.
For those of us who are still listening at home, I am actually 60 feet tall. It was incredible that we were able to get me down into this basement for what it's worth. We had an easier time getting the whiteboard down here and setting the equipment up than it was for me to get into this basement.
Yeah. But, so that job was...
Was
that the worst job you've ever had?
It is 100% the worst job I've ever had. I have people at my current job ask me if I ever want to go back, and I tell them that my current job has never made me an alcoholic, so by that reasoning, I don't need to go back. There was at one point where... I had a woman come into the store and try to return a cell phone without a box, a receipt, or any of the accessories. And it was like obviously at least a year old because it was like covered in bullshit and disgusting.
And her nudes.
And her nudes were all over the place. And it was like that like straight talk plan or whatever. Just beat them. And I had to go look up her receipt. And do you remember our one coworker who... I don't want to name names here because it's like I don't want anybody to get in trouble, but he was the younger kid.
In the cell phone department?
Not the one in the cell phone department, the young one who was dating the younger girl.
I try to block everything out.
Rhymes with a city in Texas.
Yeah.
You remember him?
Yeah. It's not obvious at all.
I mean, I don't want to say
There's like 8 of them, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. So there was at least 2 at one time, so it doesn't matter.
So they can't know. No. And I'll still fight the one. Right now.
Fight the one.
Pull up.
Let me tell you something about the one. I went to after I'd stopped working there and I'd gotten sick, once I had recovered, I had gone that Christmas. I had gone to the Target out on 173, and he was working there, and he was just. I don't know what he was doing, but he was out of his mind, and he was like shaking and looking around everywhere.
He was like on drugs. Like,
he was on something terrible. Like I don't know if he was like smoking.
K2.
Do you think it was K2?
I don't know.
I think it was meth, to be really honest with you.
It could be. He looked like a meth addict.
Well, there was at one point
he's the only person listening, and he's like, God
he's just like,
damn
fuck
it.
these guys. How'd they find you?
And while he smokes meth, like, this podcast is too real.
This podcast is just ripping me apart. But no, he came back and he goes, are you going to be back out here soon? And I said, well, I'm still looking up this receipt. Why? And he goes, oh, well, this woman's getting very upset. And he told me that. And so I had told our one manager, do you remember our one manager that we both weren't very fond of? Like the one we were most not very fond of? I believe so,
yeah. I hated all of them for the record.
But you know which one I'm talking about. She's
Rat hole?
Yeah, rat hole.
We'll call it rat hole because we had small like cubby areas where we would keep the cell phones on deck. And one day she's a Southern Belle, can we say?
We could say that, I suppose.
And she goes, oh, are the phones in the rat hole? And I fucking lost my mind, and I'm still laughing about it to this day.
I'm laughing about it now.
She was a horrible person.
She wasn't a horrible person. She was just a horrible boss.
She was a horrible person.
I mean, I wouldn't say she
was...
Like,
I dated her for 16 years. I'm going to lay that out on the... You never knew that?
I did not know
that. The math doesn't even add up.
The math really doesn't add up, because I think the age gap between you two is more than 16 years. So that
yeah, she's my mom. It's fucking weird.
What a bitch. We're finding out a lot of things about each other during this podcast. But she came out, and this woman, rat hole goes, we can't return your phone, and here's why. And the woman explodes, and she goes, I fucking hate this motherfucking place. Adam, you motherfucking racist. I'm gonna shoot you dead in the motherfucking parking lot. You better watch out. My motherfucking family's gonna come and fucking kill you, you racist motherfucker. And I'm just standing like, okay, at this point, I had lived in Rockford for maybe 2.5, 3 years. Oh, yeah. Like, I hadn't been up here as long as I am now. So, like, that's just normal to me now. Yeah. But at the time, I was like, okay, this is a bunch of bullshit, and it freaked me out. As they're leaving, this is the coup de grace of the situation. As they're leaving, I hear one of the 17 children she brought with her go, don't you fucking look at my mama like that. And two of these teenage daughters proceed to beat the shit out of a little white girl in the crowd. Actually ripped her plug out of her ear and ripped her earlobe.
Yeah.
And one guy came up like a Superman and was trying to like throw the girls off of each other. But he looked like a guy who's been in Rockford for like 40 years, yeah. Had like the gray NASCAR shirt and like the denim wash jeans, and looks like he smoked Winston's for most of his life, you know?
Yeah.
And he was like throwing teenage girls around left and right, and at one point someone,
which is his hobby, so
which clearly
this fucking works perfectly.
He was in this Walmart that day, and he had been training for this his entire life. Like every day this man woke up and he goes, boy, I wish I could just throw a 16-year-old around today. And he finally got his wish, and as he's throwing children, someone goes, world star. And I just see cameras come out of nowhere, and they start filming it. And this was all because I wouldn't return this woman's cell phone without a box or a receipt. And that is how I like
fucking asshole.
And that is how I like to sum up that job, is that's how most of my days there went.
People just yell at you. I worked on Thanksgiving Day, missed all of my family things.
Yep.
And I was on edge to begin with, and then a man, I don't even fucking remember what it was, wanted to buy some bullshit, and then he was not impressed with my customer service on Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, I worked in customer service, blah, 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 which is what every fucking person ever says. If they have a problem, I did this
they did it better.
Yeah. And I never acted like that.
No.
And I was just like, you're a fucking asshole. And he was like, oh, am I? And I was like, yeah. And I thought I was going to fight this man on fucking Thanksgiving. And I was like, you know what? You want some good fucking customer service? Don't come to a store on fucking Thanksgiving.
Of all places.
I'm missing my family. I don't get to eat pie.
Like, why does anybody think it's a good idea to have a store open? Like, I understand from, like, a money perspective, but, like, you have to just absolutely look at human life as being invaluable.
Which I think is
what they did. The stasis of that store is what they continue to do. Yeah, because I
and if you're a clever listener, you might be able to figure out where we're talking about.
I mean, we just don't want to get sued at all.
We've kept it pretty secret up to this point, but
Drama and I we're masters of the wordplay, so we're trying to make it as obvious as we can without doing it, and that's what we'll be doing for most of these shows. We'll be trying to avoid getting in too much trouble.
Everything is just alleged. Everything we should have a warning at the beginning, like, this is all just possibly alleged.
There may be some tall tales here that may have been stretched a bit, but for the most part it's about 50% truth, I would say.
Yeah, 50, 30.
I mean, what are numbers? I mean, you could make up any statistic and have it work. Did you know 70% of people know that?
True. One of the stories that I wanted to get into, because I don't like reminiscing so much on the actual work that we did or didn't do.
I mean, I wouldn't say we did too much work, so there's much to reminisce on.
Yeah, but one of my favorite things in meeting you and experiencing the workplace with you was we used to go on breaks together.
Per usual.
There we go.
There's one.
There's one. Count them at home.
If we get to 5 before the end of the episode, you get a free download movie code.
It's just for fucking Cars 2.
Like
That's all we've got. I've been sitting
I didn't
on
say
it
was
going to
be a good movie.
Don't be fucking picky.
If we get it to 10 codes, if you buy a Fire Stick, I'll hack it for you.
Yeah, which is a bitch, too. I don't want to get into that. It would have pissed me off.
It's bad enough doing my own.
Yeah. And, yeah, so we would take breaks or lunches. How long was our lunch?
Hours. We got hour lunches.
Hours?
That's why we would go places. Because
That's
we had
why.
a whole
That's
hour
why
to
the
kill.
job was so great, because we got fucking hour lunches.
I mean, in retrospect though, I'm so glad I get half hours now, because it's like there was too much time. You could listen to Yeezus twice on an hour-long lunch.
Yeah, which is all we ever did.
Which is all we ever did.
But yeah, so hour lunches, and it's frowned upon to go on lunch with the employee and the other employee in the department.
Because at most there was usually 2 to 3 people on a weekday, which was when we usually worked together.
Exactly.
And especially on weekends when they had like 7 people there, you had to like stack those things correctly.
Yeah, they were very strict about it. So what we did was not abide by that at all.
But have we ever done anything to abide by any kind of bullshit?
I try not to.
I mean, it depresses me, really.
But one of my favorite moments, and this spirals into a much better story, but I believe it was when we went on the hunt for Little Caesars, a 2-liter of Mountain Dew.
A gallon of Mountain Dew.
Because
I specifically remember in my head I was visualizing an Arizona tea jug, but filled with Mountain Dew with all the labels on it.
Exactly. And there was something else. But so there's a Little Caesars fairly close, and we went
up on Windsor there.
Yeah,
we had to come from Central.
Which is very regional specific. I'm hoping it's not just people from Rockford like, wow, I really feel something special. I know all these
No, I hope
landmarks.
that like we can reach some people who understand that like this fucked up town of ours does have some charm to it, but we're like
yeah, the Little Caesars.
We're the result of it.
That's what it says when you pull into Rockford. It says home of that one Little Caesars on
Where
Windsor.
drama and Fast Finger Slim.
It's not even on Windsor, is it?
It is. I swear to God.
It's on Harlem, isn't it?
They're adjacent.
All right, yeah. See, we can't get into this.
No,
but I do want to. We should keep sprinkling Rockford, because I hope that one day this podcast blows up and we can just live off doing tours of Rockford. We'll
right,
get like a shitty bus.
Not even tours, but we can just like say that we're from here, so it's like Cheap Trick. They can be like, oh well,
yeah,
Cheap Trick came from there, but the Dapper Dads came from Rockford.
Fuck Cheap Trick.
Fuck Cheap Trick.
I'll say it. I'm recording right now. Fuck Cheap Trick.
I'll say it. I'll let the masses
know. Now we lost all of the Rockford.
My dad went to high school with Robin Zander.
Everyone's dad went to high school with Robin Zander. That's the only way you're a fucking citizen.
If you're over 50 and you're a dad who lives in Rockford, you went to high school with one of the guys from Cheap Trick.
But anyway, so we went to Little Caesars. If I remember correctly, it was relatively cold out, because that plays into the next part of this. So we got a pizza to ourselves and some crazy bread, of course, because
and I think a 2-liter of Dew.
Yeah, at least. They didn't have the gallons. We caused a ruckus.
We caused quite the
ruckus. We burned it down.
But... You know, it's incredible the talent we have to go somewhere and either A, clear out a room, or B, cause a ruckus over products that don't exist.
This is actually quite true.
I mean, if you really want to get down to the base of what our friendship is, I think that's what the bare bones
is. I like to clear out a room. But yeah, so we got the pizza, and like sitting in the break room at that job was a fucking nightmare.
Always
the only time I did it was when they like gave us food, because they were making us work on a holiday. So they were like, we'll feed you garbage food, but thanks for being here.
Here's some pizzas we paid half.
And when I sat there was that one super weird kid with the glasses, and he'd always listen. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you know exactly.
Fast Finger Slim just made a face that painted the picture for me, so we're on the same page.
Are you talking about the guy who had to be pulled into the office because of his body odor 5 different times?
I could see it. I don't know that story, but I could definitely see it.
He was pulled into the office 5 separate times with the God, I can't even think of a right way to explain this manager, but she told him that he needs to be mindful of that, and he said that they told him the same thing at McDonald's, and that really scared me, because if you can be smelled over the fryer at a McDonald's, you should probably go see a doctor about whatever's causing the stink in your body, because I believe that means you're either decaying or something good inside you died a long time ago. Yeah, that could be your soul dying.
The only thing I want in life, I'm not a very elegant or picky man, but I will not be the smelly man anywhere. Everywhere I've worked, there's been someone who has had been told that they smelled. Imagine that feeling. Like, get called into the office and they're like, we just need to talk to you about how bad you fucking smell.
I mean,
and I'm sure that's how they would present it. Like,
yeah, like
we
there's
need to
no
talk to you
easy
about
way
how
to dance
bad you
around
fucking
it.
smell.
Like, the nice way they would put it is they would probably be like, well, we need to talk about personal hygiene today. But then that makes you feel even worse because they're like, damn, nobody won't just tell me that I stink. Like,
yeah, well, it's a hard discussion.
It's never an easy discussion.
Yeah, but I'll never be the smelly guy. That's my goal in life.
I will always be the guy.
But anyway, that kid in the break room, I sit down, I'm eating. He comes up and talks to me. Like, he'd always try to just talk to me, and I'd say, yeah, whatever.
And I know why he would try to talk to you, but I want to see if we'll get into this.
He came up and talked to me and was just chatting about whatever, and I wasn't really paying attention. I was on my phone eating. And then he starts talking about Hitler. Like, heavily.
Like Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
Leader of the
Nazis.
No,
the other really popular Hitler that everybody loves. Jim Hitler.
Oh, you mean Jim Hitler?
Yeah.
From down by the locksmith place, right?
Yeah.
Oh, man, what a swell guy.
He's got that commercial on Route 2, Jim Hitler, and he doesn't sell anything, so it's a weird commercial.
He just wants you to know that he's there.
Yeah, I'm here if you need
He's
to
there,
talk.
He's a nice guy, you need to stop by for a drink, have a talk. You know, Jim Hitler's
there. He has the opposite facial hair, so he just has that missing spot on
I
his
would just
upper
like to
lip.
go out on the record to say that if there is a Jim Hitler listening to the show, we really hope that you are a nice guy and you aren't
Jim
offended.
Hitler, come on to our podcast.
If there is a Jim Hitler
that
that
lives,
lives,
interview with Jim Hitler.
If there's a Jim Hitler that lives in the United States, I would like to openly invite him to come to Rockford so that we could go to Little Caesars and do a podcast episode with him there from one of our vehicles.
That already first episode is like the fucking perfect conjuring of everything we've ever talked about in one form.
I already feel really good about this.
But yeah, so this kid is just like Hitler. I don't remember the specific. He wasn't just like Hitler, and I was like, oh shit, he's back from the dead. But he starts talking to me, and I'm like, yo, you cannot talk to me about Hitler anywhere, because like if you're with someone talking about Hitler,
people going to
think
assume
you
that
guys are having a nice conversation about Hitler.
Yep.
And I'm like, yo, and I like got up and I was just like, no fucking way. There's people turning around, and he's just like, Hitler, you know, didn't have such bad ideas or something. I don't even know if that was it. But I was like, he just said Hitler. He could have been like, Hitler's a bad guy, but you still can't say Hitler.
But you're still
in a
talking
public
about
place.
Hitler.
Yeah. I'm not going to sit anywhere and have a discussion about Hitler.
It's in the equivalent, I think in 50 years, it's going to be people talking about like, well, you know, what was ISIS really about? I think people got the wrong idea about them. And it's like, no, you can't talk to me.
Yeah. We don't need to have that conversation.
That's not even a conversation to have. Like, I think if there's anybody listening that actually thinks that you should come and be interviewed by the show so that we can figure out what's going on.
Get to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that kid came. I sat in the break room one time. That was my one experience, and I was done forever. And so we would just eat in my car. We would listen to loud rap music. We'd chain smoke cigarettes and eat and just talk shit. And it was beautiful.
It was really wonderful.
So we do that, and my car was really dirty. I had a 97 Neon.
And let me just say, for a 97 Neon, this thing was a chariot. Like, let's be real. It got us to where we needed to go.
It got us where we needed to go, and it screamed the whole way. It was so loud that my current car, I still have flashbacks, and I'll think that my car's not on because it's just not overly loud, so I'll crank it again. And
I mean, for what it's worth, most things that are overly loud when the Dapper dads are inside them are loud for a good reason.
Yeah, and it's also great because Neon is like a pretty tiny car, and like we've stated, you're a 60-foot man.
60
so
feet.
You getting in and out of that thing.
Wrong.
I always want you. What did I say? 60 dicks. 60 dicks tall. That's how I measure everything.
But you're tiny, small, wet dick tall.
Yeah, so really, it's just.
I'm only
it's
like
not that big.
I'm like 3 inches tall.
But yeah, so you getting out of it is like a fucking experience. I always wanted to have some sort of altercation just so I could pull up next to someone and you could jump out and they could just be like, I take everything back. I've made a horrible mistake. You just bound out of every vehicle.
Even my truck. I drive this gigantic truck and I still have to bound out of the thing in the morning. My dad drove it one time because his car was in the shop. And he goes, man, you like this thing like a lowrider, don't you? And it was like, no, I just like to be able to see the traffic lights when I'm the first one in front of it.
All right. But yeah, so we're in the car. We're eating the pizza. We're having a good time.
Yes.
And then it was cold out. So there's condensation on the inside because that was one of the other good stories.
Picture the scene from the Titanic.
Yes, exactly.
Except with shit-talking,
you were drawing
me
pizza all the time. But it was cold out, and we'd sit out there for a long time, and it would get very steamy inside. And the other great thing I remember specifically one time, and it probably happened dozens, was that it was cold out, it was very foggy. We were in the car listening to some new rap song and just fucking jumping. So the car is shaking. It's steamed up. We both get out sweating. And I finally one time was like, we got to stop doing that because that looks crazy. Like, I finally put that together, and that looks like probably what everyone assumed.
More than likely.
It just fully, like, there's no question. Then they're like, yeah, of course, they're fucking in that car. They're fucking in that tiny car. I would pay to see it because that's a tiny car and a big man.
That's not the worst thing that could have happened in the parking lot, but, like...
Oh, not by far.
If I know me, I definitely think I didn't care.
But, so you had become very infatuated with drawing on my windows, which was funny. The one thing you specifically wrote was thanks for the F Shack, signed Dirty
Mike
and the Boys from the other guys. Great movie.
Fantastic
So
movie.
you would draw all over my car, and this time when we're eating Little Caesars, you got out, and I, for some reason, was in there for another minute, chain smoking 6 more cigarettes before I go in.
Eating 4.
Yeah, eating 4 to warm up to smoke 1. That's how I do it. Oh, God, that was very nice. But you get out, and you're on the driver's side window, and you come up to it. My driver's side window never worked.
No.
So you come up to it, and you're, like, motioning, like, roll the window down or something, which I cannot do. So I'm just like, I don't know. And you draw a massive penis.
Sounds like me.
And I'm like, great, whatever. I get out, we go into work. Don't think anything of it.
Nothing of it.
A week or 2 later, I never washed my car. I never wiped it off. I didn't think about it.
You don't usually wipe things.
Yeah. My current car is equally as dirty. So, I thought I had a burp. Fuck. Damn. You guys aren't going to get Cars 2.
You're going to get a free copy of Cars 2.
Signed by us for no reason. But so, there's a dick on my window. I'm not thinking anything of it. It's not super apparent to me. I don't look out my windows. I drive with my eyes closed. So, I'm going home one day on the back roads, and there's a cop. There's a 4-way stop, and there's a cop sitting there. And I'm always like, it's stupid for cops to sit there because obviously it's a 4-way stop.
Right.
I'm not going to be speeding. I'm going to be as careful as possible because I see the cop from far away.
Naturally.
So I pull up, music down, buckled in, looking great. Stop next to him. Cool. Start driving. It's a hill. I go down the hill, driving, not thinking anything of it. Glance in the rearview mirror, and this fucking car is coming up fast. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's that cop. So I'm like, well, there's only 2 reasons why that cop would be flying down the road. It's either they got a weird call out in the middle of nowhere that they're going to, or he's going to fucking pull me over. Mm-hmm. So it's the latter, and he pulls me over. And so I'm like, all right, I got to roll my window down. But it doesn't roll down.
Of course.
So I turn, and I look at the window, and I realize there's a giant dick on it. Strong start. So I roll the back window down, and I lean back, so when he comes up, I can be like, I'm not being a dick and not rolling my window down.
It just doesn't
work. So I'm like, the window doesn't work. But the way I'm positioned back and the way you drew the dick would be like balls towards the engine, shaft towards the back. So I'm leaning back, and I hope you can visualize it close to what it was. It just looks like a dick going into my mouth. I'm leaning out the back window like, hey, sorry, my front window doesn't roll down. And he's like, no problem, full government name. And if a cop pulls you over and is like, boom, right away, full government name, like, I was like, oh, fuck, I'm going to jail. I don't know what I did, but they usually are like, do you know why I pulled you over? Or literally anything else. Like, don't worry about your window. He's like, oh, yeah, that's fine, blank, blank. And I'm like, fuck. So he's like, just get out of the car. And I'm like, well, window doesn't roll down. And previously I had gotten pulled over the same basic area because... I don't know. The cop was a bitch. I don't know where they came from. I did a stop. I start going. My car was loud, as we said. She comes over, and she's like, you know why I pulled you over? And I'm like, no, I don't. She's like, your exhaust is super loud, and you rolled through a stop sign. I didn't roll through that fucking stop sign.
Did you make a California stop?
I stopped because I was also confused on where I was. I don't know where this bitch even came from. Some fucking weird little spot. So she pulls me over and she's like, your engine's loud. I think it was partially my music because if I'm on the back roads, that shit is
loud.
And so she's like, okay. I don't think I'd been pulled over like by myself at that point. So I was like, all right. And then she's like, insurance and all that shit. I had a fake insurance card that I had photoshopped.
Lovely.
Because I'm a classy person. And my fake insurance had expired 3 days before that because
You can't even like grift correctly. Like how are you?
I had it for a long time, no problem. You don't look at your fake insurance because no one alerts you about your insurance because it's not real. So she pulls it out, and I'm like, oh fuck, that's fake. And then she comes up and she's like, says something weird about my insurance, and I'm like, oh, she got me. I don't know what the repercussion for faking your insurances.
Probably jail.
Yeah, it's probably a big deal. So I'm like, oh, fuck. She's like, it expired. And then I just pulled it out of my ass like, oh, yeah, I just renewed it, and I'm waiting for the card in the mail. And she just didn't give a shit and gave me a ticket for no insurance. And then I got insurance that night, but it didn't kick in, so I went to court, and it ended up being like $500, blah, blah, blah. I was on like suspension because it was my first traffic thing. So I'm like, whatever. So this cop pulls me over. Dick window, mouth, whole thing's going on. I get out of the car. He's patting me down, and he's like, do you know that your license is suspended? And I was like, no. And he was like, do you know why it would be? And I was like, well, I got a ticket for no insurance, but I've been making the payments, and I think everything's squared away. And he was like, I don't know what it is, but your license is suspended, and if you can't come up with $185 right now, you're going to jail. And I was like, tight. Yeah, this is, I just got off work. It was like a nice day out. Everything was going to be dope. And instead, I'm like, fuck. So I had to call and be like, yo, someone come get me because I don't have money on me. And he's a fucking dick at first. He's like, what weapons do you have on you? And I had that fucking stupid, like, razor blade thing we used to have, the box cutters. And I'm like, nothing. And I'm like, I have a box cutter on my waist. It's from work. And then he's like, you care if I search your car? And I'm like, yeah, I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm not going to be a dick about it. I don't have anything in my car. Puts me in the back of his car. I take a selfie because, I mean, when in Rome.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I realized while he's searching my car that I do have a open bottle of Jameson in the trunk. Not like open spilling everywhere, but
like it had
I don't know
open.
what I don't know what open container pertains to.
It's my understanding that open container pertains to like an open beer. So
yeah,
like
that's what I always think. Because like,
it's
what
my
if
understanding that if it's screwed back on and it's like in a bag, like in the back,
yeah,
like
that's what I always think. But also, cops can do whatever they want.
Yeah,
I always think about
don't mean anything
because I'll be like, I'll get a 6-pack and then I'll drink 4, and then I'll go somewhere and I have 2, and that looks like I drank 4, and I typically did.
Or you just have 2 loose beers.
Yeah, because I'll like come out here and just bring whatever I fucking have left.
Yeah.
So I never know how it works, but I'm like, fuck, there's an open bottle technically, and I don't know what the fuck that's gonna do. And then while I'm watching him, he's like a state trooper, so he has one of those giant round hats. So he's going, I have a backpack with like all my shit in it, and he's like going through the backpack, and he keeps leaning in and out of the car, and every time he does it, knocks his hat off, and I see him getting visibly frustrated and like, fuck this hat, and then doesn't check my trunk. So I'm like, tight. All right, we're getting close. And so, perfect. So yeah, then he gets back in the car, and he's like, oh, blah, blah, blah. He's super nice. He's like, are you comfortable back there? In a fucking, no, yeah, I'm fucking doing fantastic.
Yeah, it feels like a lazy boy.
You know how many people are like, God, I wish I could get as comfy as I was in the back of that cop car last month. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. And he's like, what kind of music do you want to listen to? I'm like, I don't want to listen to something I like and relive this moment forever. So continue playing your terrible AC/DC and let me just fucking zone out of this. So then I end up getting some money and getting everything good. Turns out I had to have SR22 insurance, which is the bullshit when you don't have insurance. Yeah. And they sent it to a house I hadn't lived at in years, and no one lived at. It was my childhood home. So they're like, we sent you this letter. And I'm like, you fucking, like, my license is not even that address. It was this address where we're currently camped out at. So it was like a whole fucking thing. I had to go to court and another $500. I was like, if I pay any more money, you guys better put a fucking bench with my name on it in a nice park.
And like a nice plaque of you in front of the bench, like looking real like deep
fucking
in thought.
Flipping them off.
Chugging in America from 2016 and flipping them off.
Club America. That's what this podcast is sponsored by. America. This beer, formerly Budweiser. For those who don't know my affinity with America, when they started doing it, I vowed to only drink America for that summer. It was last year.
The entire summer. I was there for a good chunk of it.
Just because I wanted them to get a sales spike, because I wanted whoever the fucking idiot was, who's like, I guess I shouldn't talk so poorly. I'd like to be sponsored by America.
For what it's worth, if anybody from America/Budweiser company is listening, we do enjoy your product.
I fucked myself and I love it.
We probably put more into your product than most stockholders have for what it's worth.
But I just wanted there to be a spike so that one guy could be like, haha, I told you if we named it America, the sales would go up. And then I ended up, now I just drink Budweiser as like a main beer. I used to be like a PBR guy.
Yeah, I
now
remember
even like, even winter, I'm like, give me a Budweiser. I'm just knocking back. They got me.
You're turning into that guy.
And I drank some last weekend. I drank a lot.
I
drank a lot.
I believe I saw one picture of the beer darts, just one.
Oh yeah, the beer darts that's how you polish off 24 beers in a couple hours.
I don't believe the words polish off and 24 beers usually go together.
I mean, it depends how fast you polish.
It is.
But yeah, long story short, your dick on the window fucking fucked me.
I'm not going to sit here and apologize because the way you tell this story, it's almost as if my dick on your windshield cost you $1,000 to the state of Illinois. And I
like when you say my dick on your windshield.
Yeah.
Because then it makes it seem like I was just driving with you pressing your dick against my windshield. And the cop was like, you just can't do that. I mean, I don't think I have to tell you. I mean, that's got to be illegal. The cop's even like, I'm not sure because we've never seen.
I'm sure it's in an old book somewhere, but it may not be.
There's definitely an ordinance at least.
There's definitely an old man in like a check keeper's office somewhere with little spectacles who has to look in this old.
And he's
like,
old dick on the windshield.
Yes, I remember back in 1903, they told us we couldn't put dicks on the windshield anymore because it distracted the person driving. But
yeah, just the person driving. And distracted, not completely obstructed their view whatsoever. That was slight distraction. 60-foot naked man. How many cars? How many fucking cars would it be? Not enough.
Like, still one. Just one car.
It's like when the trucks have to transport the new cars. And you're always like, those seem like they're just going to fall off. But it's you naked.
I just use them as rollerblades. Yeah. I'm like, whee!
So yeah, that was one of my fondest memories. Is the old dick on the window trick. It cost me $500.
Technically $1,000.
Technically, I did the first part myself. I fucking faked insurance. Come get me. It's real now. I have real insurance.
So
now.
thus far, it looks like we're gonna have two major companies and the federales coming to look after us just for the first episode.
I would like as many cease and desists as we can get. If you want, do you want to start a beef with like if you had a beef with like one celebrity? Not like a person that we can't say their name.
Yeah, like not like
somebody a Dustin Diamond. I want to fucking fight Dustin Diamond.
Why do you want to fight Dustin Diamond?
I don't know. It just seems nice and easy. He's crazy. Didn't he stab a guy in Wisconsin?
He did stab a guy in Wisconsin.
I don't want to get stabbed. Would you rather get stabbed or shot?
Where is the question? Because I feel like if I was to get like stabbed in the thigh versus shot in the thigh, the stabbing might hurt worse. 60 feet tall, a lot of meat and muscle. Yeah. But if they're like shooting the guts or stabbing the guts, it's like I can't fathomably think of one that I would prefer over the other. Just surprise me at that point. Like,
I mean, if it's gonna be in a rough spot, I'd still rather go with shot because it sounds way better.
Would you rather be shot in the face or stabbed in the face?
Fuck. Where in the face? See, it's all very in
specific.
The forehead. I'd rather get stabbed because I feel like I could live through that. Shot in the forehead. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think you die. I'm not sure.
See, because
we can test this theory.
I've heard stories about dudes who have been stabbed in the face and the knife like bends or breaks, like their skull cap like breaks.
I have a big ass head. So.
I have a gigantic head. Fun fact about me: my dad told my mom after he knocked her up that they had to special order his hat in the military because his head was so large, and her response to that was, "You couldn't tell me that before you put a kid in me."
My grandpa was 14 pounds.
How do you?
Yeah.
Was it a C-section or a natural?
I don't know. It was.
You say grandpa, so I assume natural birth.
Yeah, it was back in the day. I don't know. We all have big heads. I was 11 pounds when I was born.
I was 5 pounds. I was premature.
You're 60 feet and you were premature?
I
pictured you were going to be like, I was a light 16.
No, I was born 6 weeks early because my mom's placenta was starting to calcify, and so basically I would have both suffocated and starved to death before I was even born. And so they had to induce the labor, and so I was born really tiny. When they brought me home, our cat was 12 pounds, and I was 6 pounds.
And the cat ate you.
The cat didn't know what to do because there was suddenly a human half her size in the house, and she didn't know what to do about it. Didn't gain any weight for the first couple months, and then I gained a pound a week for 6 months. And
I thought you were going to say for 16 years.
For the next 25 years, I gained 60. A pound a week.
Yeah, can we? That leads to a great story that I love. You told me when we worked at that wonderful place that you were a very large child. Yes. If you want to take it from there.
I have always been a very large child. I've always been a very large person. I, in fact, sometimes forget how large of a person I am until I either see my reflection in like when I'm walking into a store with someone.
And it scares me.
It scares the fuck out of me.
I get scared out of people who are like abnormally tall.
And it freaks a
like
lot of
startling.
people out
Yeah.
because I'm way above the average height for a person, and so it's like, especially where I work, I have to deal with people a lot, and I feel like
you're menacing.
and I feel like they get intimidated quite a bit
Yeah.
because as part of my job, I have to go up to people
As
and
part
ask
of my
them
job,
if
I
they
have to smack them in the face.
as part of my job, I have to get up close and like introduce myself to people and be like, "Do you need help with anything today?" And like 9 times out of 10, it's these tiny little white Midwestern housewives who are just like, "Oh God, I'm just looking for an Apple Watch." Like they don't need me.
Oh God, I'm just looking for an Apple Watch. Oh God, that's what they say when they have sex too. They're just like, oh God, I'm looking for an Apple Watch.
They don't need all 60 feet of me coming in and fucking their day up, right? And so as a child, there's one specific story my mom likes to tell everybody where we were in a McDonald's and I was crying because I got the wrong Happy Meal, and she overheard.
I still cry about that.
I still cry about getting the wrong Happy Meal.
You getting the wrong Happy Meal.
I also cry about
it's
you
not
getting.
Fair.
It's not fair. I remember when they did the Monsters vs. Alien production. I just wanted the Big Bug toy, but everywhere I went, it was out.
Like everything at Walmart.
Like
the shake machine's broken.
Food machine
God
broken.
forbid you want a fucking Shamrock Shake. We're not going to get into it now, but
that's
McDonald's,
gonna be a whole episode.
you're on the list.
You're on the list, and we would like to have.
Fucking
That's who I want to fight. I want to fight Ray Kroc, the guy who like.
Oh, God, we're really getting specific. I want to fight Dustin Diamond. I feel like I should take it back. I thought you were going to be like, I want to fight Ronald McDonald.
No.
They're like, it's all statues. And you're like, oh, fucking do it.
One time I hid behind a Ronald McDonald statue, and the cops actually showed up because I thought it was really funny how my mom and grandma were running around like, someone stole our boy. And like my little sister, she's like younger than me. She's like, my blood is gone. And like, I'm just hiding behind this clown statue the whole time. And the cops show up and I was just like, oh, hi. And they were like, we thought you got kidnapped. Like just crazy, crazy shit happening at McDonald's.
Like every McDonald's.
Like every McDonald's. This was not the dream of the McDonald brothers when they...
That's exactly their dream. I hope a lot of kids hide
go
to where their
missing
parents.
I hope a lot of shady shit happens in our restaurants.
That was the pitch. Anyway, so your mother,
my mother,
thought you were big.
Everybody thought I was big, and she overheard a patron saying, "Wow, that retarded 13-year-old sure is crying a lot." And my mom said,
how old were you at this
I was 5. And that's the point. My mom goes, he's 5. He's not. She wanted to get me t-shirts that had like a flip chart to say what my age was. So like I could just get like a big sweater that says he's 5. Flip it. He's 6.
Not
flip it,
retarded.
He's not retarded. Like I need like a certifiable certificate up until I was a grown man saying he's not actually a grown man. I needed it when I went trick-or-treating too. Because I got turned away.
Yeah.
I got turned away from so many houses as a child trick-or-treating. Because people thought I was a grown man out trick-or-treating. I would have people be like, take that mask off. Let me see how old you are. And I'd be like, no, it's my costume. And they're like, fucking take off. Like talking to a 12-year-old thinking he's like a grown man. And I'm like, look. And they're like, oh my God, you're in my kid's class.
Mask on.
Fucking mask off.
That was the inspiration behind that.
I went to Future's house as a child to go trick-or-treating. He's like, man, that was a big fucking 14-year-old pops a Percocet.
You mean he was like, I almost got in a fucking fight with an elderly woman because I took my little cousin trick-or-treating one year, and I'd quit. I was probably like 13 or something.
Right, you get to that age where you're like, okay, I can just go buy candy.
I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt. I'm standing at the sidewalk like you do, and I'm like, go up there. And he goes up, and there's some sort of altercation. Not really. He just started beating the shit out of her and was like, I'm taking
Where
off
were you
candy.
trick-or-treating? South side of Chicago?
But no, something happened, and I like started walking up, and she just goes, no, not you. And I was like, what? And she was like, you're too old. And I was like, I'm not even in a costume. That should be your lead. Like, you're not even in
like,
a
I'm dressed in
costume.
jeans and a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Do you think I'm going as like Archie from the Archie comics?
She's like, I'm sick of all these kids. And I'm like, I'm sick of all these fucking old ladies. I didn't do anything. I'm trying to take my little cousin. He's in a costume. I don't even have a bag. Where am I putting the candy?
Do you think I'm just going to ask you to drop it down the front of my pants, flip it in my mouth like a quarter lady? Like,
ma'am, flip it into my mouth.
Ma'am, could you please flip a full-size Snickers into my mouth?
And then now when kids come to my house to trick-or-treat, I like love Halloween. And then I see them show up in plain clothes, and I feel like
you kind of have to give them something.
Yeah, like I feel I don't want to be like, fuck you.
You don't want them to be like, I hate this fucking 26-year-old with a passion. Like, God, I fucking hate 26-year-olds. Like,
So I'm like, Yeah, I'll just give you the candy. It's fucking like I'm not
It's
a house.
Halloween,
It's not
like-
fucking. Well, actually, I did do the full size one time.
I would like to.
We get like no kids.
I would like to state that
We
just
get no
for the
kids
record,
because I take them all.
I think if anybody comes to my door for trick or treat, I think they should at least get a piece of candy or something, because like even if you're out like with your kids, you're gonna want. I mean, like you're gonna steal their candy later,
Yeah.
obviously when they're asleep.
And I always think about like maybe that kid can't afford a costume. I'm too
right?
nice. Like,
Yeah, like I'm way too
what
nice
does it look
about
like
that
if
stuff.
they're like, oh, we can't afford a costume, you can go try, and I'm like, fuck you.
No,
you don't get a costume and you don't get candy, and I'm just gonna eat all this leftover
And I'm gonna
candy,
sit
and I
here
don't
and
need
watch
it.
it in front of you.
I don't need it.
I don't need it. It's just going straight to my hips. I've already got a 70-inch waistline.
But yeah, I like the big T-shirts. Also, since we're on my favorite stories of your childhood, can we touch on the quicksand story?
Do we have to touch on the quicksand story?
I would like to. I mean, we don't have to.
Okay, so for what it's worth, I didn't have too many friends growing up as a young
You
man.
didn't have to paint it so dark.
I mean, I just don't want people to think that like I could have been like supervised by people, or there was like people who were like, "Hey, don't be doing this stuff." I got into some bullshit when I was a kid.
yeah, we all did.
as we're all wont to do.
Yeah,
you
I didn't
know?
have friends either. Let's just break it down.
I mean, I think that's
Let's
why
just
we're here.
Start crying.
I think that's why we're here in this.
That's why I need
basement.
the acceptance of strange listeners that I can't see. You need to
like-
hear my story.
Yeah, life's getting pretty dark, and then we just sit in silence for 5
Yeah,
minutes. Just
that's how we end every podcast.
Chirp, chirp.
You hear light crying, sobbing.
Sobbing, weeping, if you will, as we weep ourselves into ashes. But as a child, I was given a super soaker for a Christmas present, and I sat on it for the rest of winter because I was like, God, this is going to be so much fun when I get to use it in the summer. Summer shows up and there's no friends, so it's like, well, nobody. What am I? So I was just running around squirting this squirt gun, like shooting my house with it because I had nothing else to do.
I think I did the same thing.
Because it's like, fuck, nobody wants to hang out with me because I'm a weird fucking kid.
Because I think you're 15.
How come
but you're
nobody wants to?
5.
How come nobody wants to hang out with this 12-year-old with a mustache?
And a lot of anger.
Listening to Slipknot on the front lawn, squirting his house with a super soaker. Now everybody wants to be friends with that kid. And so I had moved into a newer neighborhood where they were still doing building projects and stuff like that. And so there was a lot of like gravel, a lot of sand, a lot of topsoil around. And at this point in my life, my street was about 3/4 of the way finished, and they were starting to work on the street behind us. And we were on the lower half of the hill. So as you came down the hill, we were at the bottom. So there was a lot of runoff when there was like rain. There was a lot of dirt, a lot of gravel and stuff like that. And one thing that I read a lot as a kid just because I wasn't out doing anything. So it's like I just read and played guitar. That's what I did. And I read about quicksand. And the fun thing about quicksand that very few people understand is that it's sand on top of water. It's not water on top of sand, because if it was water on top of sand, it would just be a lake.
Did you know this before, or did you learn this because of the
No,
events that
I knew
follow?
I knew this before, and that's where the story goes. Because
How old were you?
I would say not more than 12 or 13.
Okay.
Not
That sounds
very
like
much
the
older.
age where you.
It's
get
that age where you start exploring bullshit.
your
and then-
body and quicksand.
your body.
Start exploring quicksand with my body.
Quicksand
in
in your body. That's a book nobody gave me when I was growing up, so I had to figure
Really?
it all out
That's
on
the
my
one
own.
I got with the little bag where they give you the little deodorant and they talk about how you're
that's
going to start getting
interesting.
smelly and your dick's going to be weird.
With
and one
our-
testicle will hang lower than the other. I specifically remember in this little book
And
I
they
got
weren't
in
lying.
5th grade. It's true, but it's like that was like clearly out of all the questions that were asked over years, they were like, we got to put something about the one ball because
Right.
these kids just
They're
don't,
just asking
they
too
don't
many
care how it
questions
works.
about
They don't
it.
care where it goes. They don't care that they're
They
going to
just
get
wanna know
smelly
why
and
they're
hairy.
uneven.
Why aren't these matching
They're
up?
just unaesthetically pleasing to look at.
Too many kids are showing each other their balls. It's an epidemic.
See, I didn't have that. I just had quicksand because I didn't get the book about the
Yeah, you
balls at
didn't
all.
put your balls in the quicksand. Number one rookie mistake.
And so there was a lot of rain that day, and because there was a lot of deposits around my ditch and stuff like that, I took a bunch of sand and started putting it in these pools of water where there had been like trucks driving and stuff like that. So there was just big ruts in the dirt and stuff. And so it was filled up because of the rain. I put sand on top of it, and I figured out how much sand was enough to make it a viscous point. So it was kind of like a cool science experiment where it was like, if I put too much sand in this one, it all just sinks to the bottom. There's a certain amount of sand it has to form in a very special way.
Mm-hmm.
And after lots of experimenting, probably like a whole afternoon, like I'm not even kidding. Just
This summer?
This was in the summer. This was when there was no
When you had
responsibility.
time, yeah.
Right. And
Got quicksand time on my hands. That's what I'm going to start telling people.
well, for the most part, my My sister needed a caretaker growing up. She just has some physical disabilities. There was an accident when we were a kid, and so I obviously as a child wasn't able to do everything she needed, and so she had a caretaker during the day. Usually didn't like a 15-foot tall, stinky guy, angry guy playing Slipknot all the time, hanging around the house. Teenager, right? Nobody they're there to take care of the sweet young little girl who just needs macaroni and cheese cooked and like some blankets every now and again. Like they don't need my angry, horny ass stomping around the house. I felt the hate rise up in me. Like,
you just have a huge boner the whole time.
I
don't know what to do with
I'm pretty sure I had a boner from like age 12 through 25 to present day.
Now.
It's still ongoing on my Wikipedia page. Mom, please don't be listening.
It's a drop down that just says boner. You know how it's like early life, other things, boner. And it's like the longest.
But it's like the present.
Which is weird because my Wikipedia says early life other things because they're like, we don't need to fucking.
No, we don't need to get into the specifics. There's just been some stuff and some things.
Yeah, shit happens.
So obviously being out in the sun for like 7 hours making quicksand didn't leave you in the best state of mind. I was obviously probably dehydrated. Yeah. And in one of these very large ruts, I had made the perfect mixture for quicksand because I noticed it was perfect because what I could do is I could rest my hand on the top and just applying a little bit of pressure, it would sink in and it would hold. I wasn't able to pull it back out. And
that's how you became fuck.
That's how I became what drama?
That's how you became Bucket Hands. That laugh fucking ruined it. In my head, it was so funny.
It was so good.
I'm picturing you with Bucket Hands. Like, I've reached my final form. Bucket Hands. And that's why you have these buckets on your hands. I wanted to ask earlier, but you never want to bring up
I really don't like talking about my buckets.
I'm sorry. We'll continue. Didn't we have a conversation about different things you do in buckets?
I think we did.
Yeah, because I specifically remember it just being like you can piss in a bucket, you can shit in a bucket, you can come in a bucket, and that's like it. Like, that's all I know. That's all I have for buckets. All these buckets and not enough body fluids for them.
You can vomit in a bucket.
Oh, hell yeah. We've reached the trifecta +1.
The final form.
All right, so you were bucket hands.
So I finally evolved into bucket hands. I got enough candies and they were able to evolve me. And I got my arm stuck in the quicksand. And it wasn't deep. It was probably just up right past my wrist. And I was like, uh-oh. This isn't good for bucket hands. And so my next natural thought was, if I was to add water to this quicksand, I could change the viscosity of it and possibly save myself. Turns out I just really fucked myself because what I did was I took my super soaker that I was gifted with back around Christmas that I could reach and I started spraying more water into the quicksand.
So from an outside perspective,
there's a 15-foot tall, angry, horny child with a big boner with his arm stuck in the dirt. And if you were to drive by, you would just see him with a squirt gun squirting at his arm in the dirt.
Perfect. That's the visual I needed.
And by adding more water, it basically just worked as a lubricant in an ass, and my arm just slid further into the quicksand, and we got to about elbow deep. This wasn't a super deep hole. Keep in mind, this was just like something where a truck had been sitting for most of the day, kind of sunk into the mud, and they like kind of had to.
Oh, this was in a hole?
This was in a hole.
Was in a bucket.
No, this was not a bucket.
So you're not even fucking bucket hands. We'll edit all that out.
No, keep the bucket stuff. There's still buckets on my hands, but we're just not going to talk about it.
So there was a bucket on your hand and a hole in the ground.
Right.
This is like the thing and the frog and the
fish and a frog and a bog and a log and a hole in the bottom of the sea.
Yeah, perfect.
We're going to turn into a station that just does sea shanties eventually. I think a sea shanty
very
episode would be
specific sea shanties.
Very specific sea shanties.
All right, so your ground hand.
So my ground hand is stuck, and what's free is my left hand and both of my legs. At this point, I decide, maybe the thing to do would be to get some footing. If I have some footing, I can possibly pull my arm out of the hole. This was 13-year-old me. Listen, men have dicks and they have brains, and they only have enough blood to function one at a time. And as a teenager,
you had the boner.
And I had the boner because I was like,
you had the. Sounds like a court.
I had the boner.
You had the boner.
I had the boner. So obviously I wasn't thinking straight. I decided to, not unlike Homer Simpson stuck in the tar in the elephant episode, decided to put my foot in next to see if I could push my way out. And at this point, I didn't have a step 3, but it was obviously going to be, and then I am going to push the rest of my body out with my face. Because at this point, my entire right and left-hand side were stuck in the quicksand that I had created in this truck rut in this hole. And honest to God, I was stuck in there for probably about 20 to 30 minutes trying to figure it out. Because the thing about quicksand...
Was it panic? Were you like, oh my God?
At first it was panic because this was back where there weren't any houses built yet. So and obviously the work crew had gone for the day.
You were also hiding behind a Ronald McDonald statue.
I was hiding behind a Ronald McDonald statue.
They're everywhere.
There's cops everywhere, but they can't hear me screaming because I'm stuck in this hole. And eventually I figured out what I had to do was to put my hand into a fist and twist. I'm not even kidding. You have to twist your way out of quicksand. If you try to push yourself, the weight from it's like a counterbalance. It's like a Chinese finger trap. You just get sucked down in more. And so you have to slowly twist around the sand and work your way back out. So after being stuck out there for 30 minutes and making quicksand for 7 days, I managed to work my way out, go home, shower, and not tell anybody about how I was stuck in quicksand until I confided the story in you, probably about 13 to 14 years later, and now it's all over the internet.
That is one of my favorite stories, and I would give every penny I'll ever make to just be able to watch it from a distance and not help you at all.
Not do anything. Like if you could just come back in like a Rick and Morty style ship and just like hover over me. Yeah,
if an eccentric billionaire scientist approached me and was like, "Hey, I can send you back in time once," I would be like, when Fast Finger Slim was stuck in the quicksand. And he would also say it at the same time because he knows that I want to go there because he's went back in time and also seen it himself.
He's like, you got to see this shit. I was just there.
Fucking insane because that's too much to process. But yeah, I love that story. I also love, I know it's like some old joke, but
how are we doing on time?
As a kid, we'll wrap it up after this.
Okay.
As a kid, you think quicksand is going to be like an epidemic that you'll constantly run into.
See it's
that's why it
was
so funny to me when you told me this, because I remembered being panicked as a kid. There are two things that I remember from my childhood that really stuck with me. One is that there'll be quicksand everywhere, and I've never encountered quicksand.
I have never encountered quicksand that I didn't make. I just want to throw that out for the record.
I've never
seen a wild pit of quicksand anywhere. There's just been the stuff that I personally made.
It was that, and then Nickelodeon, when I was a kid, had like one of their like shorts in between for the commercials that say Nickelodeon, and there was one where it was a person, but they were a balloon, and someone took a pin and popped the balloon person, and I was young, and I was like, can we die from just being can we be popped? I was young. I was like 16. But no, it's always stuck with me. Like, could we just pop? And then it's kind of like a deep thing, because I'll think about that sometimes when I'm trying to fall asleep and be like, we kind of are really fragile. We'll end it on that note. And that was episode 1 for the 6 people that stuck around for those beautiful
If you've
stories.
made it throughout the entirety of this episode, we'd like to thank you for sticking through the whole thing, and we hope you enjoyed listening to it and had as much fun listening as we did creating it today.
Yes, true. And we'll be back, hopefully. I mean, that was all the stories we have. So
I mean, that's pretty much the entire repertoire of our friendship whenever we get
It's really
together.
all I've ever done in my life. Dick window and...
quicksand.
Quicksand dick window. That's
quicksand hiding in McDonald's. That's the essential.
Quicksand dick window is the name of this episode.
Quicksand dick window.
Because I think it'll draw people in. But yeah, we'll be back, and we'll like make online things for this if it takes off.
Yeah, this is just a tester episode. So if you enjoyed us, please think about subscribing to us. If we
thumbs up or however it works.
Thumbs up, rate us, review us. If there's ever any topics you'd like us to touch on, leave it in the comments, and we'd be more than happy to discuss it.
We'd like to do a Q&A and answer your disgusting question.
A Q&A would be an absolutely fun time, I think.
God.
I think
that's all I want.
I think what we should do is in preparation for an episode, we should just put it on Facebook that we want some Q&As for this, and we should have people do some submissions, and we'll do like the best 10 that we get or something like that.
So yeah, stay tuned for a future episode where that happens. All right.
All right, everybody stay dapper. Dapper. Dapper.